I love the Bible, don't you? And God always gives me something good. So let me ask you a question. How is your life going on in the world? Is it good? Do you think the church is under pressure? Do you think life is a little bit challenging? Not in the sense of, you might be living a nice, happy life with your pool and your villa and all those things, and that's great. That's God's blessing. But there is a pressure on the church today as to what we can do and what we can't do, what we dare say and what we might not dare say. And have you noticed it seems to get more and more? The great thing in India is you can go to a remote village, you can say anything you like. And you know what? There's no cameras, there's no one to report you, although if you have a brush with the Hindu nationalists, you might get into trouble. But I just want to read something from the book of Habakkuk, okay, which is one you probably don't often hear something from, but I love bits we don't hear. But I just want to read Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 4. And it says this. I'm reading from the King James. If you don't read the King James, it's all right, but I just grew up with it and I'm familiar with it, so I keep on using it. So, verse 4, therefore the law is slack and judgment doesn't go forth, for the wicked do compass the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceeds. Behold ye among the heathen and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days which will not believe, though it be told you. And I thought, what an interesting bit of scripture. Firstly, because I often feel like we're surrounded. And have you noticed how the world's gone mad? Do you sometimes hear things and you think, my God, how did we end up here? What happened? How did the Western world end up debating what is a woman? I mean, there's acres of time and money been devoted to that simple fact, which, I thought we knew. And as a result of this surrounding of the righteous with unrighteousness, judgment is corrupted. So the choices seem to become more and more ridiculous. And more, obviously, anti the Christian message. And you know what? We should expect that. Because that's what the scripture says. We're swimming against the tide in the wrong direction. But the question for us is, so what do we do about it? How are you going to be? And do you ever feel trapped? I often feel trapped. I look out my window and think, oh God, what is going to happen next? I had a lovely birthday this year. This is what happened. This is how life goes in India. I had my birthday. We've got a conference that's going on round about that time. We've got some visitors over from America. And my children are supposed to behave. Well, one of our wonderful little tribal little boys stole the matches, gave them to a friend. They set fire to the haystack. 9 foot tall, massive, feeds our cows for a year, in the middle of the harvest period when we are surrounded by haystacks. And my entire day and night was spent trying to control this fire. And I must admit, I shouted a lot. Put the water on that, get the hose over there, come on, quick, come on, buckets, kids running. I mean, it was like something out of a sort of comedy, really. Because Samuel had taken all these people out up the jungle somewhere, and there's just me. It's always just me. And, or it always happens when it's just me. And I thought, oh my goodness me, what are we going to do? How long is it going to take? And we had to have little rotations overnight to make sure it didn't burst into flames again. It took 2 days to get it to go out. But you can feel surrounded by trouble all the time. So what are we going to do? So I just thought, well, let's see what happened in the Bible. Because God is full of great ideas when you're in trouble. What are you going to do when you feel like you're surrounded? Now, we're going to go through Sunday school stories, so you don't have to turn to it unless you want to. The first one I want you to think about is a really exciting moment in Exodus chapter 14, when Israel leave Egypt. Great victory, we're all going, we're on the way. I'm a Christian, I'm working for Jesus. It's all going to be great, isn't it? Because, if you commit your life to Jesus and you're going with him, it's going to be glorious. I sometimes think God has a very funny idea of what glory is. And they get to the Red Sea, because God has great forward thinking, doesn't he? Get however many million of there are, and queue them up on the beach. And then bring your enemy up behind you. There's nowhere to go. Have you ever felt like there's no way out? Have you ever felt like, what am I supposed to do now, Lord? Well, this passage is well worth thinking about, because there are some little tips in here for you. And the first thing is they get on the beach, and so I don't know what you'd say if you're trapped on the beach with no boats. That amazes me. God sends them to this place with no boats. And then you cry and say, God, what do I do? What do I do? And God has a really great idea. What did God say? Go forward. What, we're going to swim? Now picture it, because you know what? We're all modern, sensible people who are educated, aren't we? We don't believe in rubbish. We've got a brain. We know how to use it. We've got technology. We are clever. We're informed. We have the internet. Can you imagine how stupid God looks at that moment? Go forward. With what? How am I going to go forward? What am I going to do with nothing when God says, go forward? That's the first thing that worries me about this passage, because Moses must have been under a lot of pressure. Now, can you imagine if Pastor Chris had got you in such a position? How many of you would be thinking, let's get him sectioned? Because, he's brought us to the edge of the beach. And he says, God says, we should go forward. How exactly am I going to do that when I haven't got a boat? But you know what? This is the greatness of God. Because quite often, even from my experience, small as it is, quite often God tells you something that you don't have enough resources to do. What are you going to do with the gap? And that's the interesting bit here, because God says, go forward before it's possible to do so. So we have the great command. We're all going forward. I'd just love to be one person for half an hour in that crowd. Can you imagine what they're saying behind Moses' back? Do you think we've got ourselves into a cult here? Do you think we're backing the wrong horse? I think he's lost his mind. What's he on? Go forward. But you know what? That is actually the way God works. Because when God says in Habakkuk, I'll show you something you won't believe, it's got to include an element of faith. And let's remember that every time we move forward, there will be an element of faith involved. It may not be the Red Sea. I hope it isn't. If it is the Red Sea, you're all right. You've got a scriptural basis. It's all right. God told me to walk across to wherever you're going. It'll be fine. I've got a scriptural basis. He did it for Moses. He can do it for me. But you know what? You can always have a Red Sea. How am I going to get from A to B when I don't have the means to do it? And what is the natural inclination? The natural inclination is to say, well, I'll wait for God to provide. I'll wait. We built the girls' building during COVID. It's a great time to start a building project, isn't it? And Samuel came to me one morning and he said, God has told me to start the girls' building. And I thought, okay, fine, we're going to start a new building. And then the next day, the bulldozer came and pulled it all down. I thought, what, you meant now? We're starting right now? Oh, yeah, we're starting now. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what are we going to pay for it with? And so we dug a foundation and we did that. And then we built a few walls and we put a roof on it. Don't know how we did it. Go forward, build the building. God says start. And somehow, when you move, something happens. But if you don't move, nothing happens. And a small step, like tearing down the building, is a step. You don't have to have enough money to build it. Just tear it down. Proves you believed. So we tore it down. We built the first floor. And then Samuel came back one day. He says, do you know what? He says, I believe we should put a second floor on. I'm like, okay. We haven't finished the ground floor yet. You do the top. Okay, all right. Well, we'll just go with it. And sure enough, over a period of weeks, the second floor appears. And then he comes back and he says, do you know what? I'm going to put a third floor on there. I'm like, what? How are we going? So we put a third floor on. And to this day, I cannot tell you how we paid for it. I don't know. Honestly. And a pastor came to Samuel and he said, can you tell me what your budget was for that building? And Samuel said, I don't have a budget. So everybody believes we've got more than enough money for everything because we don't have a budget. But what we really meant was we didn't have any money. The Red Sea is a lesson for us. What will you do when you are surrounded? What is your answer? What the natural inclination is to look for an escape route. Plan B, I call it. Have you got plan B? Well, if I find myself on the beach with the army behind me and the sea in front, I've got a blow-up life raft. I'll take it with me just in case. But in the world today, it's going to be impossible to have a plan B every time. So when God says go forward, it's going to require a little bit of courage. But the moment we start, God sends the wind to part the sea. And we can walk through. Really interesting. But what do I learn from that? From that I learn, ask God. Do what he says. Fundamental. That is the story of my life, actually. That is what I believe in. I believe that. Ask God. Do what he says. Even if he says, head this way to the Red Sea. Ask God, do what he says, because he has got a plan. And his plan is much better than my plan. And he can do the impossible. Buy a bus, which you need to fill. But he didn't tell us that he was going to send, a good 60 kids from another school. I didn't know that. I thought we'll run at a loss. That's plan B. Clicking in there. Oh, well, we'll just have to struggle on for a year, tighten the belt, believe that God will work it out next year. No. God didn't want it working next year. He said, buy the bus. So didn't he have a plan to fill the bus? And if we hadn't have bought the bus, taking the risk, we wouldn't have been able to take the children from that school. Wouldn't have worked. They wouldn't have been able to come because we're too far inside the nowhere. So this lesson is there for us to think about. When you are surrounded, what does God say? Because you know what? There's always an escape with God. But it might be unexpected. It might be, as he says in Habakkuk, something you wouldn't believe if I told you ahead of time. And so, that picture is something we can always have an opportunity in our life to face. When we first got married 17 years ago now, it's a long time, isn't it, 17 years? I don't feel that it was 17 years. I feel it was maybe 6. It doesn't feel like 7. It makes me feel so old. I think, I'm getting old. But, I had a couple of people in my church who gave me £250 and said, this is for the foundation of your church on the campus. And my heart sank a bit because it wasn't really enough money to do the foundation, but it was, we've got to start. They gave us the money. So we did. We dug these little, attempts at a foundation with £250, and there was about 2 bricks above the dirt. And it sat there for about 14 years. As a sort of testimony of we can't afford to do it. And it did, because we only finished it 18 months ago. So, it was just this big testimony of, we're at the Red Sea and we're waiting for the waves to part. And suddenly one day God says to Samuel, it's time to finish it. So what does he do? He calls the contractor and says, look, we need to get the pillars going. And it's like, well, we haven't got any money. Ooh, we're starting because God says go forward. And do you know what? It came, and we finished it. And I'm like, well, what's the rush? We haven't got 500 people. Got a tribal university starting next year. So the Red Sea is a picture for you and for me. When you are surrounded and there's no way forward, you've still got to move. I believe you, Lord, so I'm going to take a step. God doesn't say have everything in place. He says move, and I'll meet you in the moving of it. So what is the moral of the story? Ask God, do what he says. I'm saying that from experience as well as the Bible, because those things measure up. Okay, would you like another one? Do you think so? Let's have another one. Okay, right. Do you remember the story in the Bible? It's just a couple of chapters later, because Israel's on the move now. We've crossed the Red Sea. We're ready for action. It's going to be easy now, isn't it? And by the time we get to 17, you've got Moses up the mountain, with his hands up. Remember the story? Oh, Amalek. Oh, dear goodness, Amalek. Big trouble. Did you know that I think it's the descendants of the Amalekites are actually in Gaza, which is an interesting thing. Ooh, okay. Amalek. Now, I want you to understand what happens in the story. You know the story, but I want you to think about it in terms of yourself. Israel crosses the Red Sea, and now where are we going? You say, we're going to the Promised Land. No, we're moving. Before we get to the Promised Land, where are we going? We're going to Sinai. That's where we're going. We're going to Sinai, and God is going to speak to you from heaven, and you're going to hear him. Ooh, gosh, I'd love to have been there. I really would love to have been at Sinai. I mean, I don't really, because I'm quite happy that I'm in Christ, but what a moment. What a moment. God spoke in an audible voice from heaven, from the fire. And everybody heard him. There was none of that, I feel God is speaking. Didn't you feel the Spirit? And you're standing there thinking, I can't feel anything. Nothing's working for me. I hate it when that happens, don't you? Someone goes, I just felt the Spirit of God. And you're thinking, I don't feel anything except uncomfortable. Yeah, does that happen to anyone? You're all laughing, so it's true, isn't it? But it wasn't like that. Everybody heard it. Everybody saw it. So on that journey, from making the commitment to go forward with God, we're now going to draw closer. Anybody want to get closer to Jesus? Oh, you're going to meet Amalek on the way. There's always an Amalek in the way of meeting Jesus. And what's the aim? The aim of the enemy is to stop you getting closer. To stop you from hearing, to stop you from finding your place where you are closer to God for what he has in mind. I've been running a survey in my life, but I like surveying my life and seeing, just adding up what happens. And I've discovered something which is really quite interesting, and that is that life is one constant interruption. Do you know, there is never a day when I can get on with something without somebody going, Madam. It's like, what do you want now? And the best one is Samuel will come in and he has the most exciting request. He comes in, I'm in the middle of something, and he'll say, I need a cover. Now, That is the most worst thing you can ever say to me. Because what is a cover? Well, to an Indian, a cover can mean a small envelope you put an offering in. It can mean a large envelope. It can mean a big envelope. It can mean a plastic pocket to put your documents in. It can mean a bag. It can mean a large suitcase. It's a cover. And my first thought is, oh God, whichever cover I bring out, it'll be the wrong one. What do you want to put in the cover, darling? Oh, right, you want a small envelope for money. So life is a constant interruption. And I've been doing a little survey on interruptions because there are so many of them, aren't there? And I have an office now with a fan and space for the printers and the binding equipment and all my files, and it's beautiful. The only thing I haven't got is a desk yet. I'm still on the plastic picnic table, but hey, I've got a fan that works. But the downside of having an office is it's upstairs. Now, what do you think happens? Every time you sit down, you have to get up and come down. And people stand outside and they phone me and say, Madam, I'm outside. And I think, God, here we go. Down the stairs, up the stairs. I've got this new watch that tells me everything you need to know about your health or how to exhaust yourself in one lesson. And apparently you do 10,000 steps a day. I do 15 without exercise. I'm like, my God, if I exercise as well, I could get up to 30. But the only time you get interrupted is when you're doing what God wants. Do you know, nobody interrupts cleaning the floor. If I'm sweeping, nobody in the whole campus will bother me. How do they know I'm sweeping the floor? And they think, oh, she's sweeping, better stay away. Oh, look, she's sitting in the office. Quick, run and ask her something. And it is a remark. Try it in your own life, okay? Just try it out. Because you know what? There's always an interruption to stop you getting closer to God. That's what happens here, because if Israel can get to Sinai, God will make a covenant with them. They will be locked into something great. Let's stop them before they get there. And always remember that, because it is the truth. And it is a powerful truth. There will never be opposition to cleaning your floors. And if you want to dry the dishes, you can take hours and nobody will trouble you. But the second you think, right, let's go pray. Oh, I need your attention right now. So Israel, this picture is there for you to see. We're heading towards Sinai. We're heading closer to God. Better stop them before they get there. Let's send Amalek in. What's the answer? What's the answer to Amalek? Because there's a lot of Amalekites in India. It's full of them. They live on our campus and they come out of their holes every time I'm trying to do something spiritual. What's the answer to Amalek? Well, the answer was that Moses went up the hill, didn't he? And he raised his hands, and it was such a long battle that he had to have help. So, do you know, the answer to Amalek is, the first thing is that, you know, he sat on the hill. He doesn't sit in the valley, he sits on the hill. You know, when we are constantly surrounded by things that prevent us from getting closer, God says, look up. You got to rise. You know, Paul says we're seated in heavenly places. And that's not, it doesn't mean literally. It means that you've got to somehow find a way through this to see it from there. Can I see what God sees? Can I just for a moment catch a glimpse of what God intended, as opposed to just wallowing in where we're at? So the first thing is that Moses is up the hill so everyone can see he's raised his hands. And everyone can see when he raises his hands, we've got the victory. Another picture to think about. Do you know what? When we raise our hands in united prayer, there is a power to overcome the enemy. A power to overcome what is going on. Samuel and the pastors went up the jungle, as I call it. They call it the forest, I call it the jungle. And they came to this remote village. and there was a kid there, young boy, must have been maybe 14, 15, something like that. And his mother said, well, he's blind, he can't see. Well, let's have a bit of united prayer. Let's draw close. So they drew close to God, and this guy, the demon was cast out and he could see. Utterly phenomenal moment. This kid, because we have to look up to God when, and if you go to a remote village and you talk about the one true God, Jesus, well, you've got to have something in your arsenal to prove he's the one true God, Jesus, haven't you? Because there's nothing there. So what is the one true God, Jesus, going to do for an unbelieving Hindu? Well, he might just give you your sight. But you know what? It's in the looking up to God that the victory comes, and the unity of prayer that achieves a victory in the face of the enemy. Israel are not at this moment in time, how can I put it? They're not at this moment in time experienced soldiers, put it that way. They are escaping slaves who are still trying to be free men. And God has got to fight for them. Now, you may not be an experienced soldier. You may be afraid of what is surrounding you. You may feel hemmed in, and you may be trying to get closer. I want to walk closer with Jesus. But you know what? Oh, now they're sick. Oh, that's gone wrong. Oh, look, we've got a leaking pipe. Oh, how many times a leaking pipe can take you away from Jesus? Set aside a time and something goes wrong. We have to remember that we've got to look above. We've got to rise up and see Jesus is seated in heavenly places and we are with him. But collectively, collective prayer is powerful. Collective prayer breaks the barriers. Collective prayer brings the victory. And Amalek is defeated for that moment. And that's the thing to remember, because God says, I will have war with Amalek forever. What does that tell you? One victory is not enough. Don't think one victory is enough, because there will always be another. Why? Every step closer to God, there will be an Amalek to stop you getting there. But you know what? If we can look up and we can remember this story, we can actually get the victory. Okay? Good? It's good, isn't it? I'm quite impressed with this sermon. I might preach it again. Yeah. There's a lot of others, but I just want to go to one in the New Testament in Acts chapter 12 to finish. And this is a great one, because this is Peter is in prison. Okay? Now, you can't get in any more trouble than being chained between guards in prison. I mean, what are you going to do? There's no way out. It's all gone wrong. And that is a situation a lot of believers feel they're in. Sometimes in the past, we can make mistakes that affect the present and the future. And where you are today will in one way or another be affected by what you did in the past. I'm where I am because of choices I made in the past. You are where you are because of your choices and things that happened to you. And if you've made some rather, bad choices or, slightly less than perfect choices, which is all of us, you might be living with consequences that you feel there's no way out of. Okay? But you know what? There is always a way out with God. And so we have good old Peter. Now, if you read the story in Acts 12, the first thing we notice is it says, prayer without ceasing was made for him by the church. First point, we need to pray without ceasing for our brothers and sisters, because everybody needs help. Or is there anyone quitting and saying, I don't need help, I'm fine. I'll just pray for others. You don't need to pray for me, I'm absolutely fine. No. prayer without ceasing. And that's the key, isn't it? Because you know what? We can cease. We can give up. We can feel that, well, maybe I'm not very good at this. Maybe I'm not achieving anything. But you know what? Don't stop. Prayer without ceasing is made for Peter. Now, I wonder how Peter felt. Are you going to feel confident? Chained up, surrounded by guards. There's no way out. It might be that your situation is so restricted, you can't see any means of getting out of it. What are you going to do? Well, the first thing is, this angel appears, and Peter thinks he's having a dream. Well, you would, wouldn't you, really? Because, is God going to send an angel to get you out of prison? Nobody's raising their hand? I'm quite happy to go with that. You can send an angel anytime you like. Why not? Why can't God send you an angel to get you out of prison? It's possible, isn't it? Yeah. Can we have a muttering of sort of, yeah, I'll believe that. I'll believe it for him next to me, but not for myself. But that's all right, we'll leave that. So the first thing that happens is this angel appears and he slaps Peter and says, come on, get up, put your shoes on. What am I put my shoes on? I'm in prison. Haven't you noticed? That must be a dream, mustn't it? And so, but what does Peter do? Peter puts his shoes on and his chains fall off and he walks free. And you think, I would love a miracle like that. Wouldn't you? I would love a miracle like that. My chains fall off, my situation that has hemmed me in, and I just walk free. Send me an angel, Jesus, send me an angel. I met an angel once. Do you know that? I met an angel once. I did. I really did. I had an encounter with an angel. I was not very good at swimming. Don't like swimming. Hate being wet. But I thought, no, it's good exercise. I'll go swimming. And you know how swimming pools are deep in the middle, aren't they? Yeah. Well, I got into the deep bit, and I'm not very good. And suddenly, this little lady in a frilly bathing cap appeared at the side of me. And she looked ridiculous. She stood out because I would have noticed somebody that looked that stupid. She was sort of round. She had this round hat with this ridiculous cap on. And I'm struggling. I'm thinking, God, I'm going to drown. And she says, don't worry, you can do it. I'll just swim alongside you till you get to the other side. So I thought, well, okay, if you can save me from drowning, I'll happily go along with it. So I didn't think at the time. So I started swimming. I persevered. And I grabbed the end. I thought, God, I've made it. And she'd vanished. She wasn't there. I turned around and it was like, God, she's gone. You couldn't miss this woman in this swim. You couldn't miss her because she looked ridiculous. And she wasn't in the swimming pool. And I think, well, when did you get out? Because you were there. And now I finish and you've gone. I believe she was an angel. I believe she helped me out because I hate swimming. But, that happened to Peter. We have to believe that God is able. But most importantly, what can you learn from Peter's lesson? If you are surrounded, if there's no way out of your difficulty, and this is Peter's difficulty, because let's face it, he's only in there because he is a believer in Jesus. It's not because he's run up a debt. It's not because he's, committed some crime. He's in there because he's following Jesus. So the only way to get out of it is to deny Jesus, reject it all, and backtrack. So, he's stuck. And you might be stuck. It might be that you're in huge debt. It might be that you've got a huge issue going on in your life that there's no way out of. What do we learn from this lesson? First of all, prayer is the answer because everybody's praying. So prayer is a gain behind it. And all of them, from the Red Sea and all the other instances I could include and haven't got time to, the one thing that is interesting is call out to God. Call out to God. But the other thing that's interesting is obedience. Because God says, put your shoes on. The angel says, get your sandals on. Now, sometimes we don't want to obey because we think it's silly. Sometimes we don't want to obey because we've got a whole bunch of reasons why we shouldn't. My first experience of not obeying got me into trouble. I was a new pastor, and I was sitting in my office, which was upstairs in my house, and I was doing some work, and I looked out the window, and I saw this lady coming to visit who didn't like me. She was very, very strange, and she really didn't like me. And I thought, oh God, what am I going to do? She hates me. And as I stood up, God said, don't open the door. God has got the perfect manners. I mean, but she's going to have seen me. She hates me anyway, and she'll know I'm in the house and I'm not answering the door. I'm setting myself up to get into big trouble. But God said, clearly, don't open the door. So I stood there and I thought, God, I'm going to have to open the door because she's seen me. I'm going to have to. And what does it look like? And I'm the pastor. I can't behave like that. And I went through a whole collection of possibilities. So what did I do? Open the door. It was not a very nice time. I think it ended with, I really believe God should send you to Afghanistan where they cut people's heads off for believing. That's how much she felt for me. I don't like arguments. I like everybody to be happy and nice. And I was upset. But you know what? I learned a lesson. Obey. To obey is better than sacrifice. And so Peter obeys, even though, in his place, I probably said, well, what am I putting my shoes on for, God? I'm chained. It's going to be really effective. To obey. Prayer is great, but prayer is only great if you obey. Because the church is praying without ceasing. If Peter says, well, yeah, I'm not putting my shoes on because it's a waste of time. It's obey is part of it. Don't underestimate the power of obedience. Because obedience always precedes blessing. Always. If you obey, a blessing follows. And that is what Peter does. Peter obeys. Now, I've no doubt he probably prayed himself, please God, get me out of here, because I certainly would have done. And I suspect he's probably as human as you or I. Could you be in prison and not pray, please, Lord, get me out? No, I don't think so. I think we can reasonably assume Peter is having that conversation. The church is having that conversation with God, but obedience follows on from it. So I want to encourage you, if you feel surrounded, if you're crying out to God, and if you want to see the thing you won't believe, you're going to have to obey.